Hey everyone, this is Wylam with the FPV podcast. Before we get into the podcast, I just want to thank our latest Patreon supporter, Rick M. Thank you so much for being the supporter of the FPV podcast. We appreciate all of our Patreon supporters. And now, onto the show. Hey everyone, welcome to this week's FPV podcast. We are going on to episode 2 of our mini-series on long range. This week, we're going to be covering control systems. We're talking about control systems for your radio, so how you manage to control your UAV, and also video, so how you can actually view and spectate with your audiences. So, before we get in there, Elvin, what do you got this week?
Hey guys, I've been reading a lot, going over stuff, making sure I'm on point. Got the good answer, not the crappy answer, and I'm ready.
All right, sounds good. So we're going to break this up into a couple of sessions. First one, we're going to go ahead and talk about control frequencies. So these are the frequencies that you're going to be using for your radio controller. This is basically how you manage control of your ship. So, Elvin, what do we got to say about that?
Okay, so there is 4 systems that I recommend that people use. One of them is a little bit older, and it's a little, it throws people off a little bit, but 72 megahertz is a frequency that I have used in the past to do a little bit of long range FPV. It's still capable. Some people say, how can you fly on that? I say very well, and there's not a big issue about it, especially when you think about 72 megahertz penetrates through just about everything. As long as you're not inside of a car, 72 megahertz is going to have a great time reaching out to your ship for control. Now, the next frequency is 433. Which is probably the most popular right now for the long range guys. 433 has been the pinnacle for long range control for a very long time, with companies like Dragon Link, Schleer, long range Thomas Schleer's system, and a couple of other ones that are out now that have been mimicking the Dragon Link and the Schleer systems, which have been known in the past as the professionals, the things that professionals use. That's what they say. And then the next one is 900 megahertz, which is the rave now. I mean, really, it's the biggest rave right now. 900 megahertz in the U.S., it's 915. Outside the U.S., it's 836. It's 863. I can't remember exactly which one right now. Why? But it's the EU number, and they're limited to only a small amount of wattage, and it's a shame. But they make things happen with the little bits, you know. And then there's 2.4, and 2.4 pretty much to me is the last of the long range frequencies to use for distance, because it seems to be the one that gets cut off the shortest when you get to controls for control. For video, it's different, and mostly because of the antenna systems that we use. That's why. But let's do a quick little comparison. Okay, so for 72 megahertz on 100 milliwatts, you can do 40 miles. Like, you could fly for 40 miles. Now, that's not realistic. I mean, really. I mean, that's probably going to happen to somebody like Alex Green, you know, or someone like Ruben, you know, somebody that's been doing this for a while. You know, Shelby, me, it could happen. Something like that. These guys have been doing these things painless, been doing it for years, and have gotten the technique down. They know what they're looking for. They see the weak spots before it happens, and they can anticipate that. So for 72 megahertz, you could fly for 40 miles on 100 milliwatts. On 100 milliwatts at 433, you're only going to get 7 miles, right? seems like a little bit, but it's 100 milliwatts. That's still far greater than some of the distances other frequencies are going to give you. And then when you go to 900 megahertz, 100 milliwatts will get you 3.4 miles. Now, still, I mean, when you think about it, that's compare that to 433, it's half the distance, right? Somewhere around there. But realistically, 3 miles is a long way. You know what I mean? I've lost my keys in the driveway. You know what I mean? In the process of going from the driveway to the house, and couldn't find them for an hour. So let alone try to find your keys in a field 3.5 miles away, without GPS locations and marker locations already. And then for 2.4 at 100 milliwatts, you're only going to get 1.2 miles. This is pretty much where most radios sit operating in the United States. So on average, they say most radios in the United States operating on 2.4 operate between 100 milliwatts to 200 milliwatts, give or take 50 milliwatts. And it's really determined by dBi. That's where it is. So anything under 29 dBi is the maximum that your radio can put out. That's what the FCC states.
So basically, when it comes to 2.4, that's pretty much what you get right out of the store. So anytime you buy a Free Sky radio or you buy a Spectrum radio, out of the box, they're going to be running 2.4. And it does perfectly fine for day-to-day use because most people don't go past a mile usually.
Most people don't fly outside of the park.
Exactly. In most parks, you're pretty constrained on how far you fly anyways. But we're talking about medium range, long range, so we're going to be going a little bit under the frequencies. And in all honesty, once you get into what Elvin's trying to do, you're going to be buying for specific parts that probably can chunk out more than 100 milliwatts. They're probably going to be chunking out quite a bit more. I will say, though, Elvin, you gave 72 a lot of credit. That's like a dinosaur frequency at this point.
I know, man. You got to talk about it because it's still there. It's one of those things. If you wanted to get involved in FPV long range cheaply, like I got involved, a friend of mine gave me this. Hold on, this one right here. A friend of mine gave me this 900 megahertz transmitter. 10 years ago. 10 years ago. It's 500 milliwatts. This thing still works today. And it works well. It's like number three of the VTX is still on the planet that works, that people can buy, right? But it still works. And it's only $40, right? So if you think about it, 10 years ago, my friend paid $90 for this thing. And I can plug it in today and use it.
Okay.
That's a value. And that's what I'm talking about with 72 megahertz. You can still fly on that a mile out, 2 miles out, 3 miles out. With the radios that we have today, I mean, we had back in 2000, with 72 megahertz started to dissipate, and we got into the 2.4 realm. That at that time, those radios were putting out 200-300 milliwatts. So yes, you could do 40 miles. It's if you're having interference, somebody turns on the radio on the same frequency as you, then you got a problem, right? That's the biggest issue with 72 megahertz is we had a problem with other radios and your radio fighting for control of one ship. That looks really bad in the
air. That's probably one of the things that kind of 2.4 solved with its frequency hopping technology that kind of doesn't bleed over to some of the other control systems that are currently out there because they're so old and they just never got updated. I also would say that 72 megahertz, is it megahertz? Yeah.
Yes, megahertz.
72 megahertz, their antenna systems are quite long and large, so it's a little unwieldy to move around quickly if you're one of those pack light people.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a pack light person, you're going to be stuck with 2.4, and you might get away with 900. I mean, if you think about it, the stuff on the 900 is I mean, this is the 900 antenna for the R9 system. This is not a good antenna. I will vouch for that. Most of these systems, when you buy them, the first thing you do is you chuck off the antenna that you got with it, and you buy something better, because those antennas were probably made 15 years ago, and they've been sitting in a box, and somebody bought 100,000 of them, and they're just being spit out the door in each package, and they're just there to possibly work.
Possibly work. I like that. I think you were right about the controller systems. I think 400 megahertz definitely where a lot of hardcore people are currently at. But the
Oh yeah.
rage right now is definitely for 900 because of the
Oh
crossfire
yeah.
system. A lot of
Oh
the
yeah.
FPV racers have converted over to that system. But
You can't blame them.
but in reality, 2.4 is still really good. But I think as you move down from 2.4 to 900, you gain a lot of flexibility and you're not really losing much in the process. Do you think the same?
Right. Oh yeah, guaranteed. Like you're gaining another 2.3 miles of distance for dropping down to a third the frequency. 900 is like that sweet spot for control, like really, like right now, because the flexibility, the antennas designs, how easy it is to, you know, you don't have to worry about this gain and that gain. With simple 1 dB antennas, you can reach phenomenal distances on low wattage, basically.
Cool. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. We're going to go ahead and move on because we can be on this
Yep.
forever. Let's go
Oh
ahead
yeah,
and talk
definitely.
about video frequencies. Video frequencies is obviously very important, so we're going to
Hmm.
go ahead and talk a little bit about that. I think 5.8 is pretty much out for our conversation, so we're going from there on down. Which frequencies are
Right.
going to be talking about?
So like you said, 5.8 is the racer seat, and they're pretty much, yeah, anywhere in the United States or in the world, there's a couple of hundred people playing on 5.8 right now, and it's crowded, but because of the frequency, it's a short distance. You're not going to see 20 miles. You're going to see that with some phenomenal setups, but for basic everyone, you're going to see maybe 3 to 5K at that's 2 to 3 miles in the U.S., and that's it. And so that's why we don't suggest 5.8 for long distance. It's not really the one. It's most affected by trees and moisture in the air. So we move to 2.4. Now, 2.4, and on another hand, on for video control, for video, is far better response than we do with control. Uh, the distance is further because of the antenna systems that we have. It's hard to, I mean, you could set up a patch for your 2.4 and this, that, and the other, but you're still not getting a good signal. There's a lot of things that play in effect when you're trying to talk to something that's far away. You talking about frequency, distance, what you're traveling over. We call it there's a noise floor, which is the base of the noise in that area. In some parts of the world, you can walk out into the middle of a field and there will be no noise. And then there's some parts of it, and then other parts where you walk out in the middle of a field and it doesn't look like no one's there, and there's noise from just the ground, noise from the atmosphere, um, different holes of electric energy spewing from different areas, right? So you can have that effect on it. We call it the noise floor, and then there's the Fresnel zone, right, where the angle and propagation and all these other aspects of RF play an effect and can cause havoc. Here's what I suggest: don't try to overcomplicate things. The quickest way to destroy your day out doing long range and is to try to overcomplicate things. Going from one frequency to another. I did it recently. I went from 2.4 video receiver to 5.8 transmission to my goggles, and I didn't pay attention to the two main frequencies. I was transmitting 5.8 on double of my video frequency. That's not the smartest thing to do, because there's something called a harmonic, right? Each frequency echoes on a band, and it echoes that signal. As the signal gets stronger, it can get dirty at a frequency the next frequency over. For long range, there's a thing called 133. 1280 or 1.3 gigahertz video. And 1.3 gigahertz video interferes with 2.4 video, because it's the next frequency. If you double up the frequency, that's 2.4. If you go to double up 2.4, it's 5.8. But at 5.8, you get less signal interference that far up. That's the cool thing about 5.8. As you get that far away from everything, the noise becomes from the other frequencies become almost nil. No, right? You don't see nothing as you go 3,000 hertz up. As you go down to the lower frequencies, you start to see that from the base up. So 433, third harmonic is 1.3. Fourth harmonic, 3.3 megahertz. Right in between. And then the next one is 2.4. So fourth harmonic of 433 is 2.4. So you can actually cause interference up the band depending on how dirty or clean the system that you're using echoes up the band. So that's one of the things that has stopped a lot of people. You don't realize it, but it stopped a lot of people from flying long distances. You're causing interference the next size up, and that usually you're going from your control system noise to your video system noise. And one you gotta see, right? One you gotta see, and the other one you can kind of get a little bit of data in there and still fly along, but if you can't see, you can't fly. You can't do then you got to do return to home, and that's no fun.
Okay, so a really good way of kind of noticing whether or not you're having a harmonic issue would be that you would see this cycle of good video to bad video, and then that would kind of give you an indication that there's something wrong with the frequencies that you're using, because you're always going to have two frequencies you're using for what we're talking about. You're going to have a control frequency, and you're going to have a video frequency. And if you run into anything that's, double of one of the lower frequency to a higher frequency, you can run into harmonic issues.
Right. Definitely harmonic issues will play a major factor on whether or not you get to whatever goal distance that you want to get into, because it's just there. Each transmitter, we talk about separation when you're building ships. You talk about moving the 900 transmitter away from the receiver, and this away from the GPS. When you're building long range ships or UAV, these things you must have a minimum separation of 100 millimeters of gap, because that 100 millimeters is where the most amount of the noise from each unit can be. Like, a GoPro puts out some noise in the first 50 millimeters. So having it further away from the GPS unit actually is a benefit.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So one of the tried and true good habits to be in is that whatever video frequency you use, your control frequency should be lower that in number. So if you're
Right.
using 2.4 video or 3.3 video, you should be going down to 900. You don't want 2.2 video and 2.2 control, because then
No.
both your systems could potentially go out at the same time, and then you really can't do anything.
Right. And that's it, it's you can run 2.4 and 2.4, but it's a pain in the ass to get it done. And the chances of you having a failure are so great that no one would really do it. I mean, you would just be proving a point that you could do it. But your day is going to be horrible trying to get out with everybody else and fly distance with all the other frequencies. It's just so easily done with everything else. Why make things more complicated?
Right. And I would say that right now, because like if most people are in the 400s and 900s, what you would want for video probably is in the 2.4 range to 3.3. Or if you just can't afford it and you just have a bunch of 5.8 at 800 milliwatts, you can kind of get away with 5.8, but it's not recommended.
Yeah, but you're not going to see, like we talk about, you're not going to see any real distance with 5.8. I mean, you're going to stay within, and it's always going to be an issue. You might go out right now and fly 4 miles and then go somewhere else, and you're not even going to get halfway across the field. You know what I mean? Because it's just that iffy with 5.8 for distance.
For distance.
For 2.4 distance with video, you have 1.3 and 2.4. 1.3 is the tried and true. But, in the U.S., you only got 2 channels. You got 1258 and 1280. And, you can't do nothing. You got to go out by yourself. That's one of the things that annoyed me a couple of years ago was I go out flying with my friend who's got 1.3, and we couldn't fly together because the systems are too close, and things wasn't as well as they are today. Receivers are better. Most of the stuff today, the 1.3 receivers, Clearview and all the other ones, are far better than what we had 6-7 years ago with Lawmate and the others. There is some of the old receivers that are way better, but you're going to spend a lot of money on, $150 on a receiver is not really needed when you need 2 for 1.3 for diversity. You know what I mean?
Okay, so yeah, good points.
1.3 is probably the king daddy for distance. I mean, everything that I know that's been over 100 miles of out FPV has been with 1.3, and 900 megahertz video is so grainy in the beginning. It's really not pleasurable. I mean, if you do a 900 megahertz video, you're out to prove a distance point. That's all you're really doing. It's you're going out for distance and saying, oh, I'm going to hit 90 miles or whatever. 900 is great for that, but your picture is never going to be quality enough to record from. It's going to look like the worst DVR footage you ever had. The whole flight.
The whole flight.
That's what I remember about 900 megahertz. It was like, I remember flying with a guy, and he goes, you should probably try, 5.8. And I was like, what's 5.8? And he's like, dude, I can't even see what you're flying through. He called my 900 megahertz through camera the worst thing he ever saw. He said that's archaic, and I was like, okay. And then I saw 5.8, and I was like, what the hell is this? But anyway, so 900 is what you would use for stupid reasons. I mean, to me, if you're just out trying to show somebody how far you can go. I mean, or research, or something like that. But 1.3, 2.4 is going to give you your best video for distance, going to give you your best. 1.3 is going to give you your best penetration through tree lines, stuff like that, somewhat behind obstacles or through obstacles when you're right up on them. 2.4 is going to give you your best video all around. Circular polarized antennas are going to help you with that. You're going to get best range, best filtered, clean video, rejection of noise with circular polarized is the reason why it's there.
Okay, there you go. And there is also 3.3, which is kind of out, and Alex has been toying with those. So that's one to keep a watch of.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where if you want to go 3.3, you're going to get better range than 5.8, but you're not going to get substantial, range. Like there's not even antennas right now for 3.3 to do more than 5 miles. Like there's not I'm sure Alex has got a patch. Maybe a couple of other guys has got circular polarized crosshairs for 3.3, but really for the market right now, there's pretty much nothing.
Okay, there you go. So
antennas.
Yeah, so the limiting factor for 3.3 right now is the accessories for it, which basically means antennas. All right, so let's go ahead and move on from that. We're trying to keep these episodes short. Let's go ahead and talk about the equipment for the actual control frequency. So we have 7 listed out. I think Elvin has experience with like 3 to 4 of them. I only have experience with 1 of them, but we're going to go ahead and go down the list, talk a little bit about what we know about them, and then we're going to make some we're going to talk about some of them in general, just in case you want to pick up one of these systems.
Right. So let's talk about Remlick. Remlick is a 433 system. It's been around for a few years. It boasts a huge amount of range when you go outside of the basic package. But as for the basic package, it's about $150 to $160. If you get one, I suggest you get the heat sink that goes. There's a metal heat sink that you have to buy when you run it at its peak voltages and its peak wattage. Otherwise, it'll get hot and it'll destroy itself. To me, it's really simple to set up. It doesn't have a computer program to set up or to mess with anything. Basically, whatever you set up your radio to how the radio is going to work, it's how it's going to transmit. It transmits PPM and single wire. It transmits both of those. And so you can use it for, a quad or a wing or a vector system or an INAV system, something like that. But really, I would say, here's the problem with Remlick. The receiver. The receiver is this big, right? I mean, when you look at a quad, you don't really have room for a receiver that big, you see? So for a plane, I would say a Remlick would be more apt for a plane or a real long-range quad. That's something that's meant to carry a gimbal or go a wild distance, something that you're just trying to make sure that you don't lose control signal with. I mean, it can put out 2.2 watts of 433 signal, which means it will blast pretty much everything around you. Here's the problem with Remlick. Because it puts out so much power, you're going to get noticed by everything around you. In other words, if you're using this system and you're near a ham station and you don't have your ham license, you will alert every ham operator around you, that something is just blasted, okay? So Remlick is that system. It's a great system. It comes with good antennas. It's one of those systems that they make sure that you get the best of best antennas that they can give you. And the only negative thing I can say about Remlick is that service is a pain in the butt. They're hard to get in touch with. They're hard to stay in contact with. And it's hard to get things taken care of when there's an issue. But I've heard good stories, just they take a long time with Remlick. So for service, I would say be careful. Treat your stuff as if you don't want to lose it. Be careful. Don't abuse your stuff. That's pretty much it. Now, the next system that I like, and a lot of other guys recently have gone this route from DragonLink, is the R-Link system. It's actually MFD Link, which is known for long-range systems that go plus 100 kilometers. They make the first, the MyFly Dream plane, which is the big 2.2 meter giant plane that carries 220 amp hour batteries, and can fly for 12 to 18 hours. They make the system for this, and they make a tracking unit and everything. Now, R-Link is basically switchable from 400 to 800 milliwatts, and you can get about 20 miles with this system. It's got a little, program that you can go in it and set up things and put limits and stuff like that, and activate switches and stuff like that. But really, it's not really a full-fledged system. It's pretty much set up for simple play. It's close to plug and play. I mean, basically, it's like, Remlick. It's just simple setup, basically. And it works. People say that they're getting good range, they're getting good performance. It's not that expensive. It's actually $150 for a solid transmit and receive system. I would just say I would not use their antennas. People haven't gotten the best performance out of their antennas. That's about the worst I can say about the system. Otherwise, the system works, and for 400 to 800 milliwatts, the performance is great for $150. And then moving on to DragonLink is the other system I know right now, and DragonLink is probably the one I've grown to love the most over time, because I don't know anyone that has ever had a failure with DragonLink. I've heard of people that say it, but I've never seen it. And straight out of the box, DragonLink works. Like the new system with telemetry to the phone system, DragonLink V3, the slim module with 1500 milliwatt telemetry receiver talking back is phenomenal. Like you want to go out and be sitting at 30 miles and talk and see exactly where your ship is. This can do it. I mean, it's phenomenal how well the system works, and it doesn't have a cheap price though. I mean, at $329 for the DragonLink V3, it's next to the most expensive system you can get your hands on. But when you buy a DragonLink system, here's some of the things that come with it. You get really good antennas, like no joke. Like you get well thought out, well made, well designed antennas that can take abuse and keep on working. And that's what you need when you go a long distance. You need stuff that's just reliable. You don't have to worry about it. You don't never want to hear, like I heard 2 days ago, that the 900 megahertz antenna that's on my R9 is the worst one of them all. Like, like my stuff is on it though. You know what I mean? Like that's a bad thing, for me. So that's something I have to fix. And like I said, you can get telemetry, 1500 milliwatts receiver. The only thing I can tell you is that DragonLink has had a history of time of, if your DragonLink receiver, transmitter antenna is close to your GPS, you're going to have some problems. You have to exercise maximum distance. And I would say like 400 millimeters distance from your GPS is good for DragonLink. If you do that, you're going to have a good time and you're going to be able to go far, 30 miles. It's just phenomenal. Now, the last system that I know a lot about personally is the R9 system. It's 900 megahertz, and I have no complaints. Like, I keep flying thinking that sooner or later I'm going to drop out of the sky. I've recently I've gotten to 2.5 miles, and it's like I'm just flying along because I come from a system that I don't really want to talk about that would allow me to get somewhat out safely, and then it would start beeping, and that beep says it lost a packet. Well, if you hear that like once every minute, that's not a bad idea. Beep, a minute later, beep. But when you hear beep, and you're not even a football field on the other side of the football field, you got to start panicking. So I don't want to talk about that. That pisses me off. Anyway, the R9 system has been very easy to work with. You plug it into your radio and you go into the setup on the Tyrannus and you pick R9. And if you're in the EU, you pick EU. If you're in the United States, you pick FCC controlled or monitored, and bam, you bind just like you normally would bind a Tyrannus receiver. Once you're done and you hook it up, you get all the functionality that you had with all the other Tyrannus stuff that gives you telemetry. I have on my long-range quad, I said, the R9 mini receiver, and I'm capable of going far enough out to where I haven't seen the 99% signal dissipate below 80, right? And it only dropped there for like a split second, like, it's gone. It's back up to 99. And so I've been much happy with the R9. I know a couple of people that are running it, and they're very happy with what they're getting for distance, for performance. It's actually the system that I'm recommending now to everyone, because for the cost at $90 for the system, you buy the module, which you can buy for $49, and you don't even need to buy, like, FR Sky makes the R9 module and a receiver. The receiver is big, bulky, probably not what you're going to use on the quad. So you either need a Slim, an R9M Slim, a Slim Plus, or an R9 Mini. One of those three will work perfectly fine on the quad. The Slim is a little longer. It's about 1.25 inches. The R9 Mini is about 0.5 inch long. And then the Plus has twin antennas. So that would be why I would go with a plus, is because diversity, just a little bit more strength, a little bit more area to receive and determine whether or not which is the one getting the right signals, right? So I would say R9 has been good. I would suggest it to anyone. I've run it at 500 milliwatts and I haven't had any issues. I do have an issue about the R9. There's no battery. You got to go buy a big battery for your radio. You start running 500 milliwatts and 1 watt, which is the R9 is capable of, and that radio voltage just starts dropping fast. I went out. Okay, so I went out and flew on 1 watt, 900, and I got 2 50-minute flights. Battery starts. The alarm starts going off. So I gotta stop, charge it, then go back to flying. Right. So 2 more flights, and the battery's dead. Right. So I'm what do I got to do? So I go out and buy, and that's with the NiCad that comes in it, the 2000 milliamp NiCad that comes in the X9 and the Tyrannus plus radio, X9D plus radio. So I went to a 3-cell life battery, which is 9.9 volts or 11 volts fully charged, and I'm getting better performance for time-wise, but where I see the biggest advantage with 900 is at about 100 milliwatts. It's you're not really drawing a lot of juice out of the battery. So I think I've flown 58 sets on 100 milliwatts. So basically I've flown almost 2 hours straight on 100 milliwatts 900 R9.
Okay, there you go. That's a lot of systems actually for most people. I'll talk a little bit quickly about Crossfire because, as most people know, I do have a lot of TBS stuff. And
yes, you do.
One of the things that I love about pretty much TBS stuff is that out of the box, it's one of the easiest plug-and-play systems that you will get.
True.
You just plug it to the back of whatever controller you have, and it has a little I'm talking about the full-size version, by the way. I'm not talking about the micro, which is the 100 milliwatt racing version. That probably will get a lot of people what they want to do, but I'm sticking with the full-size version. It has a small little LED. You can plug in an external battery if you want to turn it up to 2 watts. And if you buy into the TBS ecosystem, it is going to be the most simplest system because everything talks to each other from whatever you're controlling with all the way up to whatever you're flying. Everything talks. All of the telemetry stuff just works right out of the box. It's pretty amazing. It's one of the systems where, as long as you're willing to do it, it will work phenomenally.
Now, the thing that I want to ask you is, does having the Crossfire system, is it a bonus having a Tango?
If you have the little one, you want to have a Tango because the Tango will give you the menu system on the screen, so it's easy to navigate and make adjustments on the little one. Whereas on the big one, there's a controller on the big one and an LCD screen, so you can make modifications on the big one on the actual module itself, or if you own a Tango, you can do it on the screen. You have an option of doing both. What's really nice about the Tango is that, and I have not tried this, and I'm not going to try this, okay? But you can actually switch frequencies that you're using mid-flight, and it will work. And I am not ever going to do that. I'm not going to say, well, the Crossfire says we have a very, very noisy noise floor. Let's go ahead and switch to a completely different channel, and everything will work when you're a couple of miles out. But Trappy swears that it works, and I'm sure he's right. but I'm not willing to try that theory out. I'm sorry.
I'm sure he's right.
There is a couple of cool graphs, by the way, on the Crossfire 2 that can kind of show you noise floor and signal to noise and all that stuff, but I don't fly out far enough to actually use those, so I'm not going to be the greatest person to talk about those. So one of the biggest downsides to the TBS Crossfire, and Elvin already brought it up, and that's cost. It has to be one of the most costly systems to buy into.
Yeah, it's in there.
It's so like, and the other factor is that it's not always in stock all the time. So because a lot of people are buying this system, at times you could go months at a time without seeing that system available.
And the accessories, don't forget, like I tried to get the diamond, to put on my system, and the Immortal T for the transmitter for the radio, and I there was nowhere in sight. Nobody had it. Like I had to go see Mr. Alex to get one made for my radio, So a 900 megahertz dipole. So that's what I did. But so that's your other option. That's pretty much your only other option if they're out of stock.
But like I said, all these systems, they definitely have their pros and cons. I will agree with Elvin that if you talk to a professional, they're going to point you to Dragon Link. Pretty much everything on the professional scene, people are using Dragon Link. And it's been there for a very long time, and they're probably not going to let go of that because I'm sure they're bringing bank on all those professional contracts.
Yeah, I mean, like I know National Geographic's got an $80,000 ship in the air when they go up to the Arctic to do mapping, glacier mapping. That's 80 grand for the ship. It's beautiful and it's huge, but that's 80 grand. They say to control this ship and to bring it down safely, we use Dragon Link. And you say, well, what about? They say, no, we only use Dragon Link. That's it. They see it as no other option. So
take that with a grain of salt. Any of these systems, if you do your homework and make sure that everything's working, will probably work reliably for you. There are a couple of other systems that I guess we'll just mention lightly because we just don't have experience with them. There's R-Link, Easy UHF. Am I missing anything else?
R-Link, I have experience.
Okay.
A little bit of experience with. I know a lot about it. I just don't have it. And I've had helped 2 people set one up, so it's not that hard. But Easy Link, not the greatest track record immersion system, RC UHF system. There's DT Open LRS, another system, not a great track record. Some of the greats get it to work well, but the rest of us, mere mortals, are doomed to fail and continuously fail and fail and fail. So I wouldn't recommend that. And then there's the Thomas Schleer systems, SCHERRER, long range system, which is 433 and really is the most powerful system you can get your hands on. The system's designed to do 300 kilometers and plus. They have a 7-watt, 7-watt amplifier, not transmitter, amplifier. That they boast 200 to 300 kilometers minimum.
That is a long ways.
That's a long ways. And just don't forget now, all of these systems in the United States require a ham license. All of them, right? 5.8. The only one that doesn't is the 2.4. So 2.4 doesn't require a license, a ham license, but 5.8 does, 433 does, 1.3 for video, 2.4 for video. All of these frequencies require a ham license. You should go get it. Part of learning ham is you learn a lot about electronics and there's a community to support you in learning those things and helping you progress into higher levels of the ham license to generalship. Um, and I think that's pretty much the ones that count.
Wrapping up this episode, let's go ahead and talk about Vtx hardware. So, Elvin, which hardware would you recommend for people looking for VTX video?
For 2.4, there's a few VTXs out there right now that I would suggest you use. There is one I would completely stay away from. It's mind-boggling how they keep selling these things and no one gets to use one properly. The Bosscam VTXs, stay away from them, guys. It's not worth the headache. But here's the ones that do work for 2.4. Furious FPV has a 2.4 VTX out. Watch out for some new products that are coming out for them in the 2.4 line. Immersion RC has a 700 milliwatt VTX in international and US only configuration. One gives you 8 channels, the other one gives you 3 or 4. The US one gives you the least amount as normal. So that's the ones I would suggest: TBS, Immersion RC, and Furious. Those 3 you shouldn't have a big issue with performance. They should work, and they should just keep working.
All right. Next one down.
Now, for the next one down is 1.3. I mean, that's real distance. There's Immersion RC makes a 1.3 VTX that works really well. That's the great thing about Immersion RC's FPV transmitters. The older versions, they just work. They don't cut out when they get hot. They either work or they don't. And that's one of the things I've come to rely on for long distance. Most of my long distance ships have Immersion RC 2.4 or 5.8 VTXs, and whether it's 100 degrees outside or 30 degrees outside, they continue to work flawlessly. I have not had an issue until I run one into the ground and tear it apart or rip the antenna off of it. Then I got a piece of garbage. But for 1.3, there's the Lawmate receiver. That's another one. Those antennas, those VTXs from Hobby Wireless, they work flawless. They give they come out at 400, 700, 800, and 1 watt for the maximum power. And you can't, I mean, like 1.3, you can't mess that up now. Like, I feel like you get a singularity antenna, which is my favorite antenna for putting on a ship, because you can put it in the wing on a wing. You can mount it in the foam. So that basically protects the antenna. Like, I don't have to worry about ripping an antenna out when I crash or I hit the ground, because it does happen. I mean, occasionally you're out flying, something happens, or in my case, you know how I am. I'm flying low to the deck, goofing off, and then ding, I hit something or hit a tree or a power line, and if that antenna's sticking up, it'll get ripped right out, And the singularity puts it in the foam, like this one right there, and that works really well. And that's a great antenna for wings. It's not the best antenna for quads, not the side mount one, but for the top mount one, it does work. But yeah, 1.3, there's immersion, Lawmate, and I wouldn't play with much of nothing else. Once you get the proper antennas, whether it's 200, 400, 800 milliwatts or 1 watt, you're going to have a good time with 1.3. The only problem is you only got 2 channels. So that's the hardest part, is determining which way you're going to go with your system, because the more you centralize to one side of the band, the better performance you're going to have. So if you're going 1258, you want to kind of get your stuff tuned in that direction. If you want 12, I mean, it's not a lot of difference, but really it is when you're looking at distance. Like the further you go out, the more tuned everything should be for each other. Like your antennas should be more tuned for the specific frequency you're on the further you go out, because the performance will be that much more.
That
for
is
5.8, there's so many though, like hundreds every week.
That's what people, a lot of people fly proximity, so that they don't really need this stuff. It's only for crazies like you, Elvin.
Well, I mean, like, okay, so like for 5.8, if you're interested, there's the AKK. Everybody's using that to go distance. Some guys were out this morning with me. I was with them. They got there first, and we were all trying to go stretch out 1 mile. We were all out doing the measurement, right? If distance doesn't count, it did this morning. I didn't make it out of the parking lot, which was sad. It was like, been talking all that smack, and I didn't even get out of the parking lot. Like, I'm gonna show y'all today. Yep. I'm like, I gotta go.
But that's all we're going to have this week. We just went over control systems, and if you have any questions, give Elvin a holler, and then we will continue on with this mini episode in another week.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right, signing off.